pairing live stream. Sometimes takes a couple of minutes. This is the worst part. I always feel stupid saying hello to you again. Okay, live chat. Ah, there you are. Okay. I'm going to have to. There we go. Kia ora, Blair. It's so lovely to see you again. Well, I say again, you haven't been on my interview on my page before, but we know each other
Yes.
outside of the web realm. So thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me today. It's been a little while since I've held an interview. I've done lots before, but I've taken a couple of months off. And what a wonderful way to start the whole ball rolling again. So kia ora, Blair, and
Thank you.
thank you.
That's a nice introductory, and thank you for inviting me to speak. I think these podcasts are so important at this particular time because it's just such a simple way of basically turning lights on for everybody. And so many people don't have access to be able to go to things. So to be able to do it through social media is actually, really, really important. And it actually reminds me of a question that someone said once to Tabaash when we were doing a meeting. And he was actually talking about Yeshua ben Joseph and Jesus. And the person said, if, Jesus had incarnated into a physical body, then, how would he go about spreading his message, basically? And so, of course, Tabaash said, well, he'd probably end up being a Saatchi and Saatchi executive in advertising and use all the social media platforms that he could possibly utilize. And of course, the audience laughed. But then there was some sort of bemused looks on people's faces because I suppose for some people, it's like they would have expected him to come down the Narronga Gorge on a donkey, it's that sort of thing. But yeah, so again, thank you so much opening up this platform for people to learn.
I think you're muted all of a sudden, Blair.
Am I?
You
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. That's better. Yeah, you just disappeared. The sound disappeared for a few seconds.
So it was just one of those sort of pauses you have to make sometimes, basically. So yeah.
It's just ensuring that people are listening.
Well, it's early Sunday morning, so who knows? They're sitting in bed,
Absolutely.
perhaps eating their croissants and having their coffee and listening, seeing what's going on in the world. So,
If only.
so yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and there are some very strange energies around at the moment, as we were speaking before. We came on this call.
Yeah, it's very unsettling at the moment, and I've learned how to not necessarily over question when we get involved in these types of energies because I think they're always there, but things are so amplified at this point, and as individuals, I think we're amplified too. So
Mm.
I think we're feeling these things in a greater way. And this is both highly productive, but it could be counterproductive if you buy into that vibration and energy. And, as people are aware that, the more lights you turn on, metaphorically, the more you see. And I think humanity is needing to see, something greater than themselves. I think there are individuals and factors and infections in life which don't want the lights turned on. So of course they make conscious effort to disrupt and
Yes.
but at the end of the day it's don't take it personally and just allow yourself to keep being brighter and lighter actually. So just turn that volume up more and more all the time. And I don't
Yes.
think it's difficult because it's one of your questions that you put out before was how can we engage more in I'll call it higher consciousness. And and I really believe it's awareness. It's awareness of the day you're living, awareness of the way you're sort of following yourself around, and the way you think, the way you feel, the way you live, the way you're doing the driving. And we're living a day. We don't have to be over focused on what's over there. It's to focus on the Sunday that we're living, and create good routines, create good mind, body, and spirit energies. And I think if you can start the day, as I say, and Tabaash says, knowing your God, then it's just an excellent way to engage with source power and make that vibration the ultimate artery of the day.
Yes, yes.
And then other things that you think and feel, etc., in a way, have to take guidance from that major artery, because it's what feeds everything else.
Yeah. I for the longest time, for as long as I can remember now, I start my day off with a meditation and a connection to the earth and to God and to everything around me.
Yes.
If I don't do it, if for by any chance I'm in a rush or I don't get to do it, I find my whole day is discombobulated. I'm disconnected from everything. I come home and I go, damn it, I know why. And I'll sit down and do it then.
And I think particularly when, as you've been on your road for such a long time, and I know many of the listeners have also been on the road for a long time. And when you initiate that higher vibration constantly in your day-to-day life, then when you slack off or get distracted or whatever the case is, you really feel it. And because it has become an essential ingredient to the way our lives are now.
Yes.
And saying that makes me think, it is a way of living. And because it's a way of living, then if you don't live in that way that's natural to you, then you end up living in an unnatural way, which of course we have a reaction to physiologically, mentally, emotionally, etc. And it just whacks us around. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think that, living in a time like we do now, that concept of essential ingredients is really a daily thing. I don't think you need the same ingredients every day, because the vibrations are shifting. And I think it's good to, create a moment for yourself where you consider carefully before you even get up, okay, what naturally feels the ingredients of this day. It's a little bit like putting a formula together or a recipe for the day. And because we're evolving all of the time. And okay, yes, there's a lot of familiarities and similarities. So we're going to utilize lifelines that we had yesterday for today as well. But then we're also bringing in a whole lot of new lifelines for the day. And otherwise it gets too repetitive. And that makes me think that we need consistency, but we don't necessarily need too much repetition. We'll just get caught up into the same energy, the same vibration. Whereas if we recognize daily, hey, it's a different vibe, a different frequency, then, I don't need to repeat the same methods that I had yesterday. I can utilize those as reference points perhaps, but hey, I want to create, a whole lot of new energy and new opportunities, etc. Because the natural state of life is our advancement, obviously. And
we're creators, aren't we, Blair? We're our natural nature is creators.
yes, yeah. Well, I mean, as Tabaash teaches, we are God, and because God's the ultimate creator, and I know in the Christian Bible that phrase, God created man in its own image, but it actually never says that the image was physical.
No.
And so we are just the essence of that vibration. So we are that vibration. So we possess all those qualities all the time. And so it just never goes away. But of course, in human terms, what we end up doing is, putting layers of human nature around that energy. And then that stops us from being able to use that power, feel that power, see that power. Or instead of being creators, we end up being resolvers.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
but funny thing is, isn't it, is that we're resolving so that we can create again. And
yes. I don't know if you've heard of a man called William Whitecloud. I've learned so much about the creative process from his work, and his and it really resonated with me that nothing is created without tension, and in
yes,
fact, creation is the resolution of
mm,
tension.
yes, yeah, yeah.
So,
It's
but what we tend to do as human beings is, because tension's uncomfortable, we don't like the
mm,
tension. So
yeah,
we end up, and you use the word resolving,
yes,
and and that's exactly what we end up doing. We try and resolve that tension and
mm,
return to comfort. And in doing that, we end up in square one again.
yeah,
So his whole um, premise about manifesting or creating the life that you want is to hang with attention, because it's not our job as to how it is going to manifest. It is
mm,
our job to visualize, or to to put the thing that we want out there,
mm, mm,
and then know that it's going to happen,
yeah,
but not be attached to it
mm,
either,
mm.
or how it's going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah. As you're speaking, I'm getting a picture of my thoughts here. And because we're always gathering information all the time, so that information comes within us, and all information has to be translated into some form, whether it's communication or action or thought, etc. And if we don't do that, then it gets itself wound up. And this is where the tension is created.
Mm,
And so the less we express, the more tension there is. And so, of course, invariably, once we have that release, then the tension disappears basically. So, and again, so that means we're in a better position to be able to be a creator, but also the natural state is expression,
mm,
to take all of what we've gathered and find a way of saying something in whatever way, whether that's saying that with action or with words, or in a thought or whatever, basically. See, and so yeah, it's the whole spirituality and how it's blended in with the physiology is really, really interesting. When
mm.
you look at it from a point of everything being that vibration, basically. See, and
Yes,
so yeah, so I get exactly what you're actually saying, and so it was interesting to that picture that I got there doing that, and I got it like a ball, and I saw like tendrils of energy coming to us and then spinning around, and,
yes,
and if you don't do something with it, then it gets tighter and tighter.
yes, 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 absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that
Um,
controls itself cellularly as well, so it just
mm,
takes it to that level. So
yeah, it's an interesting concept. Well, it's not even a concept. For me, it's a reality, that, or a truth, that we create our own experience. Um, and here's an interesting question that I hear a lot of people asking, and I've asked myself quite quite often, is how is that, if we create our own experience, how is that collectively manifest in the world, into the world that we find ourselves at the moment, which is
yep.
um, it's like a world of polarity, isn't it? So
Mm,
good versus evil, light versus dark. Um, I know, I know that the opposites are actually the same stick, but just different ends of the spectrum of energy. So light is the different frequency to darkness, a higher frequency to darkness, but they're essentially the same thing. The same with love and hate and all those opposites. Um, what what we're seeing in the world play out at the moment is nothing short of a battle between the opposites.
Mm.
I I've not been able to understand that intellectually. Um, have you any light to?
Yeah, well, I think that whenever there's massive transition, physiologically, mentally, spiritual, whatever, if you look through human history, there's always been catalysts through conflict.
Yeah.
And so therefore, when you look at the levels of conflict that are occurring at this particular point, I think, and it sounds an odd way of putting it, but I think it's a positive thing because it's bringing a level of awareness of change. But
Mhm.
most importantly, I think it's bringing in a level of understanding about the conflicts we may have within ourselves. So therefore,
Mm.
if life is happening because of us, then it's teaching us to be more conscious of our thoughts, our words, our deeds, because we realize that we're sending out these signals all the time. So if you get enough people thinking and emitting in the same way, well, then of course you're creating a vibration. And
Mm.
and also too, I think that if humanity does not make fundamental changes when it's really necessary, well, then we force the changes by creating mass realities.
Mm.
And you can take into account, World War One and World War Two as an example of
Mm.
that.
Mm.
And yet, both those wars brought in social change, economic change, political
Mm.
changes that were obviously important to bring in. But
Mm.
humanity was still caught up into a lot of draconian methodology and ways of living and
Mm.
class structures and all that type of thing. And so now it's more to do with our spirituality.
Mm.
And so obviously, we all have the resources within us to make things better. And so with our thoughts, our words, our deeds, you know, it's like we're just sending this energy out, and I'm getting a picture of it like a layer that surrounds the earth. And so the percentage of energy will determine exactly what's going to happen, what the experiences are going to be.
So
And
we're creating our own matrix
of course
almost.
we are, absolutely. And of course we're, a microcosm of that macrocosm. So as much as that occurs, it has an impact on ourselves. So we become the matrix itself.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and
Yes.
therefore also part of our evolution as well. And you know, the concept of the fight between the light and the darkness, or evil and goodness, etc. But I think it's like, I don't want to put it like a fight. I think it's just this conflict between the productivity and the counterproductivity, and to find that new balance of power. And of course, there have been so many factions that have been used to being in charge, and this is changing. So of
Mhm.
course, they'll put up a fight, and that's not just in bigger political arenas, etc. This is also within ourselves as individuals. And so as individuals, we need to be conscious of what is our own inner conflicts that are actually occurring. And of
Mhm.
those inner conflicts, then how are we responding to those? And that's probably a really good way of looking at it. And I know Tabaash teaches this, which is, the way you respond to something will actually always tell you about yourself. And
Yes.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, so basically we're being presented with, well, who are we, and what's important here, and what am I knowing about myself? What is my message to myself at this particular point?
Mm.
And I think that for those who've been on their spiritual road for a long time, we seem to have reached a place in the road of life where we're advancing in quite a remarkable way.
Mm.
And it's not like a big leap. I don't see it like that we're, crossing some big bridge or anything about nature. We're still on the road.
Mm.
And and
but
yet,
it's like this.
no, I don't see it like that.
Most of it.
It's straight in front of us. But
Yeah.
our awareness pretty much determines exactly how we
Mm.
see that road. So, of course, in some people's awareness, they may see it like that.
Yeah.
And
I don't see it hard.
yeah,
I just like I've said, I'd say in the last 4 years, my my learning curve isn't so much a curve as a vertical line up. It's just, oh, you know.
oh, look, the impact of everything is like that. It's
Mm.
rather like, okay, if you want to know, let's know. If you
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
do, it's no longer about, shilly-shallying around and thinking when's the right time and all that stuff.
yes,
It is now. And if we can accept that and work with that energy, we activate within ourselves the power of life in such a way where we get our own individual results. And I think that's just a minute by minute, second by second experience.
yes,
And
yes.
Tabaash teaches, it's that whole concept of awareness. And when you have awareness, then you're aware of yourself as the power. And then it's really a simple matter of deciding, well, what am I going to do with that power?
Mm.
And
Mm.
and I've seen in my own experiences, it's really about using that power for the moment that you're experiencing it.
Mm.
Like before we did this interview, so I just had a little sit down and I put the thought out to my human nature and to my higher nature. And I said, as I always do, I am God and I'm going to use my power, to have this excellent interview. And so, and other things that I projected basically. So it's directing a conscious intention from the power that you are. And I think if we can do that more in not only our own everyday lives, but the roles that we're playing as light workers and the way that we want to assist.
Mm.
It's a simple matter of I'm using my power for that client. I'm using my power for, that webinar, whatever the case is.
Mm. Mm.
And or, just in everyday sort of circumstances as well. So
Yes.
it's a consistent evolution.
So having said that, it would totally follow that all the all the circumstances globally, like the economic system and all that,
Mm,
actually
mm.
you can influence that
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
by your projection, you
of
know.
course. You think
Yeah.
about it collectively, all systems that are, presently active, one way or another, we've all had a part to play in the creation of those
Yes.
systems.
Yes. By
And
compliance, yeah,
yeah,
at
yeah,
the most
yeah, yeah,
basic level.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel because there's such inequality financially amongst the world, and I was thinking about, I just made a trip to Kuala Lumpur, and there's enormous amount of division between huge amount of wealth in that place and poverty.
Poverty, yeah.
And I was thinking, well,
Polarities.
there's just so much that can change if people sort of disperse things. And that's not saying the wealthy have to give their money away. It's just there's too much imbalance that's going on. And so of course, the financial sector has become another form of politics, really.
Oh,
And control, and as a lot of people understand this. And so obviously if you're in a structure that invariably becomes counterproductive, it starts breaking down.
mhm. And it
And
has.
yeah,
And it,
yeah. And therefore, but it only is broken down because the motive for how it was run was not a positive motive.
mm,
And I don't believe that, you know, God wants people to be poor or anything of that nature. I think, but it's all about equality, whether it's financial, emotional, spiritual, whatever.
mm,
And you think about all the conflicts that are happening on the planet, you can see how they're often related to not just religious beliefs and things, but economics and power struggles and belief systems on other levels.
I think it's the same thing,
Yeah,
Blair.
yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing. Politics, education, everything. The whole governing system. It's
Mm,
the
mm.
same thing that
Yeah,
we're talking about.
yeah, yeah. And as we're speaking, I'm thinking, well, everything is sort of more about division at the moment rather than, bringing everything into a collective belief system where
Yes,
everyone basically.
yes,
That's I
um,
think when you look at the spirituality, that's when you realize that bringing that vibration in, it engages us in being able to see that, feel that. But then,
yes,
the powers that be who are in charge, obviously, they'll have their day, but they have to evolve into that way of seeing. And I think that's what's happening. But it's a process and it's very frustrating.
but we want it now or
Well, of
yesterday.
course, absolutely, yeah. And that so just goes to show, what you were saying before. It's about realizing, well, we have a part in this. So,
Yes,
therefore, in your own affirmations or your own, creation of those things, then project a light frequency around that,
mhm,
or try not to get reactive and get more active in what you can
yes,
think, you can feel, and possibly what you can do. So,
yes. Rather become objective than subjective, and yeah, sovereignty. The word sovereignty keeps coming to me. Behave like a sovereign being. That nothing other than your God nature has dominion over you.
yes,
And if we all behaved like that, we would all be sovereign in God,
yeah. Therefore,
knowing our God nature. Yeah.
sovereign as creators and sovereign as a collective, with the
Yes.
same vibration. And Tabaash has taught me that because I asked him questions about esoteric civilizations and the way that they ran, their systems and their structures. And he
Yes.
said, well, the thing is about esoteric civilizations is that they were basically of one thought. So,
Mm-hmm.
so they
Yes.
carried a common thread of higher consciousness.
Yes.
Therefore, because of that, then there was this unconscious, unspoken knowing and understanding about how to function. And therefore, everyone was united in that vibration, even though people still had their personalities and did their things. But because they had that collective thread of God nature or high nature, whatever one was to call it, there was no conflict of interest in any way whatsoever.
Yes.
And of course, no one was out there to prove anything. There was no ego. There was nothing of that nature at all. It was just evenness and expression. And the word that came to me was respect. And
Yes.
I think that's something that seems to have disappeared. There seems to be so much disrespect. Well, I mean, look at, the way people who are challenged by the light are very disrespectful
Mhm.
of what
For
that is.
sure. For sure. It's funny, while you were speaking, the the phrase "the Tower of Babel" came to my mind. Um, so you know, the Tower of Babel was when that division happened,
Yep.
the shattering of equanimity. Um, my friend Maya Mansur, who I'm doing some really amazing work with, she's actually from America. Um, she was given the 10 principles, actually the 11 principles of equanimity, um, blowing away the whole idea of equality and equity, because they still have contention in them. Those words still have contention in them. Equanimity being that I am no better or no worse than you.
Yes. Yep.
Or
Yep.
no better or worse than, as I am,
Yes. Yeah.
as I am,
Yeah.
whether I'm disabled, whether I'm a genius, whether it doesn't, I'm no better or
Yes. Yeah.
worse than you. And um, so from that premise
Yeah.
follows that we, with that respect, we each get what we need.
Yes. Yeah. As you're speaking, a thought just came. I've just written it down. Individuality has got out of hand.
Yes, because it's become personality.
Yeah. 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 Totally.
Yes,
And of course, with that personality, it's just, the people bring the ego in.
yes,
They
yes,
forget about the collectivity and that we're actually all here to serve each other, not just serve yourself.
yes.
You know?
So I've had this mantra for a long time now, and it is part of the pillars. It's the pillars of the new way of learning and living. And
Yes.
the it's just three things:
Yes.
connection, connection, connection with ourselves first, connection with each other, connection with the earth, and most importantly, connection with the higher, the
Yeah.
higher that you subscribe to, be it God, be it Allah, whatever, even if it's, uh, even if it's yourself, your higher self. Um, the second one is communication, because communication is what facilitates the connection and maintains the connection.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so if we're connected and we're communicating in equanimity and connection, there's no conflict in that, because it's all compassion and love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the last one is creativity,
Yeah.
because we all create our
Yes.
experience.
Yeah.
And if we can teach or it's not even teach them, if we can remind our children about who they really are, we will change this
Mm.
whole planet in a
Yes.
generation.
Well, I mean, I've never had kids, but I participate in. I've got a lot of godchildren, etc. But when you look at these souls who are being born, and I was just thinking about one of my godsons who's 4, and observing him is quite extraordinary because you can see this wise being, within him. And
Yeah.
4-year-old, his father said to him, oh, he actually, the child came to his father and said, I think I'm going to become a doctor. And his father said, why do you want to do that? And he said, because it's very important that we all serve each other.
Wow.
And so this is from a 4-year-old. And so what you just about teaching children from this, I think that the younger generations, they seem to be born with a level of awareness that previous generations have not been born with. So they
Mm-hmm.
have that balance, and I think they have that connection, they have that communication, and they have that ability to establish and to create. And so when I observe this little boy, it's just he's really drawing it in. He's understanding things in a way
Yes.
that I didn't when I was born. It was just, but it was a different vibration.
Yes.
And so I think that with all of those things, I'm going to perhaps create a formula here. So connection, plus communication plus creating equals participation. And therefore, the more we participate with those maxims, we bring more balance into our whole being. And then in that, we've just got basic access to everything. And it's
Yes.
like they're just basic principles, aren't they, that are essential to the way that we are as creators and
Yes.
and and as people who are serving each other.
Yes. And the whole um it's no longer called education. It's wisdom building. Um, the whole point of any kind of systematic um, coming together to learn is is going to be, or is, I'm saying is because it is already here, for
Yes.
many of us.
Yep.
Um, and and everything is here in the moment anyway, which is another thing that I battled to get
Yep.
my head around, now given up, I just know it. But it is about building wisdom rather
Mm-hmm.
than rather
Yep.
than knowledge. And wisdom is knowledge and experience in action.
Yep.
So the
Remind me,
whole
yeah, you
the,
reminded me of a teaching Tabaash gives, which is um, if you don't do anything with knowledge, then it just stays knowledge. And
yes,
when you live now, that's when you turn it into wisdom.
yes, yes,
Wisdom becomes awareness.
yes.
And awareness allows you to have a relationship with something higher in you. And
Mhm.
then when you have a relationship with something higher in you, then that higher aspect of yourself is in a much better position to be able to direct your human nature.
And
And therefore
create.
the human nature is, and
Yes,
therefore the human nature is able to exactly, yeah.
yes,
And so, but look, all of us can gather information and say we know. But if you say to people, well, how do you live what you know?
mm,
Then a lot of people, would probably think, well, what do you mean?
mm.
And it's a bit like buying a book and then just creating a library but never reading anything. And so you were surrounded by the knowledge, but you haven't actually participated in it. And believe me, I know people who are like that.
I was just thinking, I've got a lot of books on my bookshelf that I haven't actually read, but but I know what's in them. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
It's a
but
bizarre.
your intention will be to do so. But I think also too, like I'm an avid reader, and 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 I buy sometimes 6 books at a time, and I know I will read them at some point. I don't,
Yes,
just go one after the other like that. But what I find I end up doing is dipping into the
yes,
books
yes.
and therefore, I don't think it's a prerequisite that you have to go from the beginning to the end. I think that, it's being able to use information. And sometimes I know probably a lot of the listeners have done this, where you can go to a book and you just, all right, give me a page. And
Yes. Or
you
just open that up. Yeah.
actually, I'll tell you a really funny story. All right. This is really hilarious. So I was in Melbourne and I had done an event there, but I decided to stay on for a few days and have a little bit of a break. And it was stinking hot. It was January and it was so hot. So I was wandering around the streets of Melbourne and I thought, oh God, I need some air conditioning. So I was looking for a building or something, but there's nothing around. So I saw this stone church on the corner. I said, oh, that'll be cool in there. So I went into the church and it was just, I sat there and there's a few people praying and stuff like that. So, it was very peaceful and very quiet, very cool. And it was just such a gorgeous atmosphere, you see. Anyway, so I noticed the Bible was there. So I said to Spirit, oh, okay, well, give me a passage, like this, you see. Now here's a really good example of Spirit messing with you, with humor, you see.
Yes, I do.
And anyway, so I opened up the book, and it came to, I can't remember exactly what the page was, but it said this. It said, if a man comes into the temple with crushed testicles, then he must leave this room and bathe himself in the river to be pure. And I'm like, what? And I didn't think there were things like that in the Bible, but it actually got worse because it said, and if a man has a nocturnal emission in the evening, then again he must bathe his body, before he comes to praise the Lord. And then it went on to other things as well. And then I'm like, I can't, but I burst out laughing. And of course, I disturbed all these people who were praying. And so And I looked up and I said, okay, look, you guys. So, and I just got this picture of my mind of them going like, you know, and so, but yeah, it is quite hilarious actually. So, so, you want to ask me any questions about anything?
I do have a couple of questions here that my friend sent through before. Um, some of them we've kind
Yep.
of answered already. So um, she says, what percentage of the world's population can see through the circus we see playing out on the political and medical stage? Or what sense do you get? I feel that it is growing all the time. Um,
Mm-hmm. I mean, Tabaash is just giving me the figure at the moment about 70%, which is quite high,
it
you
is.
know, and so obviously there's a lot of awareness, you know, that people can see through the circus, but seeing through the circus and being able to influence the shifts and change is obviously a process.
Yes.
But then seeing is a first step, you
Yes.
know, so, you know, when people suddenly see the inadequacies and the imbalances, then, you know, that's a step towards change, basically, you see.
Mm.
And so yeah, I think things are definitely evolving. They have to, you know, and you know, I mean, the systems themselves they are breaking down. And but it's but I think it also has to be a careful process because obviously we need to replace it with something better, but I don't think that's emerged yet. You know,
Yeah,
and so it's back to that collective thought again that we were talking about.
I think it's definitely they're giving me the word. It's definitely in the birth canal.
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
the new earth is there.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
the fact that I know that there and you might have some insight on this because actually this was the next question. Any guidance on timeframes of the financial and banking spheres settling into a more stable, equitable system? Um, that actually led quite well into that question. I do, I'm getting information all the time about what is here, what
Yep.
is here waiting for, and also there is a school of thought, and I it resonates well with me. I'm not sure if it resonates well with me because that's what I want it to to be, but um, that the system that we see at the moment actually has disintegrated. But like you said, people or and this is a gross generalization because not all of us need the time to it would be too shocking for disclosure to happen all at once. There'd be a lot of chaos, a lot of conflict, and probably destruction if if it went we went ta-da, this is it guys, and everybody went oh my giddy aunt, we've been lied to and all the things.
I
But
agree. I mean, things have to evolve carefully and
yes,
just put up into specific systems that we function in our day-to-day
mm,
lives. You know, you don't just suddenly switch that system off. You know,
yes,
you have to initiate carefully, you know, new ways. But I think as human beings, we have to be careful about our reactions and responses to what's going on. I mean, okay, obviously we are unsettled, and you know, there's obviously fear based around you know what's actually going on, and the destabilizing, if you like, of these systems.
yes,
And yet, my feeling is that as much as there's this destabilizing of what was, I think there's this building of what will be. So it's a
what
bit going like that. And that's obviously not obvious sometimes because you know the foundation of that has to be established. So as individuals, we have to be conscious of our own responses and our own
mm,
actions and take even more responsibility for how we're doing the driving. And when I mean that, I don't just mean in our own actions, literally, but I think in taking responsibility for our thoughts around these things and our judgments,
Yes.
around these things,
Yes.
and not to buy into the conflict of it and point the finger at who's to blame and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
But or okay, I'm a God, I'm in a body. This is the situation. Today, how shall I be with this, feel this, think this, etc.
Yeah. Yes.
And again, I'm thinking about
How am I going
seeing
to
ourselves.
create the experience I want? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, totally. Well, I was about to
and
say
yeah,
I've seen oneself as a wealthy being, and when I mean wealthy, I don't mean just in financial terms, but
right.
in every term possible,
It is.
because you're
Yeah.
exuding, that vibration, and but I think we have to remember that we've all made an agreement to be alive at a time in human history where this is happening. So we want to participate in this because it's part of our own individual evolution. So therefore, if you think about the question, any guidance on timeframes and stuff like that, then, well, isn't that up to us as individuals?
Mm.
And I think human nature can put up for too long with stuff and not find their voices or actions or attitudes. And so simply because they feel it's out of their hands or it's not their thing or whatever the case is,
They've
it's
been conditioned into thinking that, haven't they,
yeah,
Blair?
yeah, 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 totally. Yeah,
Conditioned into
yeah.
thinking
And
they're
okay,
helpless. Yes.
yeah, yeah, and I think that you can't really put a time frame on these sorts of situations because it's an evolutionary thing. And yet at the same token, I do feel there is stability that is occurring.
Mm.
So if we each, just within yourself, how am I stable and what is my strength, what is my power, what is my focus?
Mm.
And don't, and I think this is important, don't put the finger of blame onto anything or anybody, because that just keeps you sucked into an energy, basically. And it's
Yeah.
difficult to not do that. So,
Yes. Well, yeah. And it also um, it takes our focus externally instead of internally, and where our real power is.
yes, yeah, of course, yeah. And so, but I think there are systems that are created to act as diversions, taking us away from that vibration and power. And I think there's definitely on worldwide, that there's a great deal of let's get people's attentions away from themselves.
Yes. Yes.
And so of course the whole thing is pay attention to yourself and
Mm.
and and do it in the simplest way you can. And
Mm.
heck, what could be simpler? Waking up every day and being the one who makes the choices, being the one who decides the vibration of your day without having to pick up a cause or get heavily involved in stuff. I think it's just
Mm.
living a good life, mind, body, and spirit. And not everybody has to be a light worker to do that.
Well,
So
we're all light workers.
yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah,
all
yeah,
light
yeah.
workers. So, and and one thing that has keeps coming to me, whether it be through videos or through people who I talk to, or, is the fact that so many of us are hell bent on retribution for
Mhm.
crimes to humanity and the suffering that we've been put through. But we've all come to this earth with a role to play. I honestly believe that, and whether that role seems, from your perspective, evil or bad or good or whatever, is irrelevant. The role is there for everybody's experience. And actually it's in service. It's
Yeah.
in service
Well, it
because
comes down. Yeah, yeah. that concept again, the way you respond to something tells you about yourself.
Yes.
So of course, when you understand that, you know, whatever you focus on becomes your life, whether it's in this life or another lifetime, then you think about the perpetrators of, you know, as you put it, inhumane actions, then, you know, you realize, well, yeah, they're having to be accountable to themselves. And yet we also have to be accountable to ourselves for our reactions and responses. And so, yeah, we're all
Yes.
playing our roles. But then, you know, again, it comes down to what we were talking about before, that as a collective energy, we've created people like that to do that because of our collective thought.
And not only that, that there, through our suffering, a lot of us have actually evolved.
Correct. Yeah, totally. And then stop suffering.
Exactly. And then
And
realize it's not about suffering, it's about
yeah, well,
evolution. It's
exactly.
about growth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're taught, you know, consistently that we have to suffer. You know, we're bombarded with suffering all the time. You see,
And
whether if it's not our
school
own,
is
it's other
suffering.
people's. Yeah. And so, I
And I'm
mean,
a
you know,
teacher.
between humanity, there's an awful lot of suffering going on. So, but it's almost like suffering becomes a new paradigm. You know, and it's
Yes.
possible to suffer. So,
Well, a friend of mine always says to me, remember, Calli, that pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. Yeah. And but then I think also the more you evolve, then the more you have choice.
I
And then
agree. The more you create your experience,
yeah, so suddenly it's like, you know, pain doesn't even have to come into the equation at all.
absolutely, because you become aware of
Yes,
what you're
yeah,
creating. Yes,
yeah, completely. And it's taking control of the way that we use our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes, the stories that we're consistently participating in. And
yes,
bringing that word back, it makes me think, well, there it is, isn't it? It's how do I choose to participate with myself, you know,
yes,
in my day, in my life. And we're all practicing through our lifetimes lots of different ways of participating, and we soon learn which aspects are counterproductive, so
yes,
therefore we don't participate in that way. Okay, some people still do, but because they get caught up into the vibration of that, because, you know, I suppose in a way suffering is a way of evolving,
yes.
but from a karmic perspective, but then invariably you get to the point where you realize, well, I don't have to evolve through suffering.
No, that it's yeah, it's all about learning. And for
Yeah.
me, it's all about learning. That's why we're here. And learning is synonymous with experience. So, you know, whatever we are experiencing, we're learning from, and whether that's through suffering or joy or whatever it is, if we can be aware that every moment
Mm.
that we're
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
existence on this plane, on this earth, and but possibly even when we're not,
Yeah.
um, we're we're on this journey to experience, to learn.
I'm thinking that the perpetrators of pain, suffering in a world scale that's occurring at this point, of course, that's you know, they're going to have to face that at some point, you know, in their existence, and so, you know, as the saying goes, no one gets away with anything. You know, it's just always going to be there in front of you, and so, but in the way they are, that's their program, that's their story.
Mm, mm,
And so, you know, I think it's a reminder to all of us to pay even more attention to being the highest you can be, being the greatest you can be, etc.
mm,
Because that power changes, you know, that sort of vibration and energy, basically.
mm,
And I remember reading something in some book which says the best way to accelerate someone's karma is to forgive them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and because forgiveness detaches you from the emotional experience that you had.
Mm, mm,
And then it puts all the energy and the light onto them.
mm.
And it doesn't mean that that creates suffering from them, but it means that they have to face, and be accountable for
Yeah.
whatever it is. And it makes an awful lot of sense, but a lot of people find it really difficult to forgive
Yeah.
because of the traumas and the hurts and whatever they've gone through.
Mm.
But how can you truly be free if you don't? And not just people and situations, but yourself.
Yes. But
And
what if
I think
we,
probably the hardest is
yeah,
to forgive yourself.
this question's just popped into my head. Sorry, Blair. What if, what if those people who are in those roles that we're perceiving as evil and causing suffering, and what if they are simply playing a role in service on
Well,
a
yeah,
spiritual
I
plane
absolutely agree.
for
Well,
us?
they're all the dictators and despots and people
Yes.
who've created so much pain and suffering through the world, through history. They're all presenting themselves in a way where we're evolving, we're learning because of that. Okay, and that's really hard to take into account. To think of looking at someone like Adolf Hitler, who was a great teacher for us all, so to speak. But
Mm.
but that's exactly what all of those types of individuals were. And
Yes.
and and so, but that's a difficult thing for a lot of people to consider,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I know that there are elderly um, soldiers who still find it difficult to forgive the Germans and forgive the Japanese
Hmm.
because of what they experienced when they were soldiers in World War II.
Mm. Mm.
And I remember teaching Tabaash did, which was as the generations die out, as he put it,
Mm.
then what dies with them is their stories. So therefore, the influence of that vibration becomes less and less.
Mm.
So if you think about people who went through the Depression and went through World War II, well, those people are heading out now.
Yeah.
And as they then the influence of their experience is no longer prevalent on the planet anymore.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so you can see the evolution of how things actually work in that way. But it's important to be able to look at those energies and understand the wisdom and the power. But
That,
at
that
the end of the
came
day,
with them.
yeah, totally, absolutely. But there's got to be a point where we evolve away from conflict,
Yes. And
and which I
what I'm getting is that those and even in our personal lives, like I have specific experiences in my life that broke me. But when I say broke me, I don't mean it in a negative way. I could mean it in a negative way, but um, like my lovely friend Heidi, who's actually watching this at the moment, said to me at the time of my separation, I said to her, my heart is broken. My heart is broken. Um, and she said to me, and I'll never forget it because it absolutely slapped me in the face and said, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. She said to me, be grateful for a broken heart, Calli, because it's open. And I was, oh my
there
goodness,
you go. Yeah,
it's so true.
yeah,
Because that
yeah.
was one of my pivotal
Yes,
experiences that brought me closer to being who I am today.
absolutely. I mean, the catalysts that we create in our life give us an opportunity to look at who we are. I mean, my wife passed away 4 years ago after a huge journey with Alzheimer's. And so I adapted myself totally to my care for her and over a 15-year period. And then she passed. And I remember sitting at home one day and thinking, God, I have no idea who I am anymore. I mean, I was doing my work and all that sort of stuff, but as a person, when you put yourself on pause for such a long time. But then you realize that you have to reestablish yourself. So, of course, as you have discovered, it's like, well, I was able to create a new heart.
Yes, yes.
But I've got a lot I need to do now.
I've just noticed that there's a whole lot of stuff on here. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. No, there's just some lovely, lovely, yeah, there's some lovely comments over here. There's been a few bits and pieces about the internet, which is acting up strangely at the moment, I think, with solar flares and other energies.
Things happening, but yeah, so I got things I need to get on with the day, but let's do this again.
Yes, for sure, Blair. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your energy and your love and compassion. And
it's a great pleasure. And also to all the listeners, thank you for listening, and big hugs all round.
Yes. One kisses.
Be the ultimate creators you can be. So
yes, thank you.
I'll never leave you. Mwah. Blessings to you. Okay, bye for now.
To you too. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Blair. Bye.